Got it. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Carson City Planning Commission for March 27th, 2024. And may I please have a roll call, please?
Chair Preston,
Here.
Vice Chair Lloyd, Commissioner Borders, here. Commissioner Brooks, here. Commissioner DeChristopher, here. Commissioner Kilgore,
Here.
Commissioner Cron.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Borders, may I ask you to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to open up for public comment. Public is invited at this time to comment and discuss any topic that's relevant to or within the authority of this public body. Morning, Denny. And please sign in. Don't have a sign in?
There wasn't one available.
We'll get one. Go ahead.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I would just like to thank the city for having the master plan discussions at the library on the weekends. It's been really, really helpful for my understanding, and I appreciate it. I also brought a question with me to talk to Heather about the development off of North Ridge and Roop, and I was noticing that there seemed to be a dead space in their facade area above the apartments, and I'm thinking now that I think that should be one of the requirements if they want to have a height, a break in how high they can make something, is that they should be able to justify it as a necessity for heating or cooling or for something other than just dead space, because that knocks off views and it closes our visual situation. Even if they want to stay in line with a track or a chain, you know, there are other chains of their facilities. They want them all to look alike or be standardized. I think that those dead spaces shouldn't really detract from our skylight or our views, basically. And so it's something I hadn't considered till I got to see the construction at the site that it was doing. And it seems between Heather and I, our remembrances that they could have gone even taller, but they didn't. So I'm very pleased that they didn't. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Denny. Okay. And we have the action item of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? Okay. Are there any modifications or changes?
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of February 28th, 2024 as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Commissioner Cron. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6 is meeting items. For possible discussion, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request for 1-year time extension for an approved special use permit, SUP, to allow for the construction of a metal carport at the Carson City Dispatch Center on property zoned Public Community, PC, located at 4649 Snyder Avenue. Assessors parcel number APN 009-166-01. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. On March 30th, 2022, the Planning Commission approved LU 2022-0066. It allowed for the construction of a metal carport at the Carson City Dispatch Center at 4649 Snyder Avenue. On March 20th, 2023, staff administratively approved a 1-year extension to March 30th, 2024. And on February 21st, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a time extension, noting that the project had been put on hold to explore another possible location. However, that site has since been determined to be undesirable, and the applicant has decided to move forward with the originally planned location. The applicant anticipates completion of the project by the end of this year. The Planning Commission is authorized to approve additional extensions of time in the event that circumstances beyond the applicant's control result in a failure to complete applicable conditions and commence the use. In making its decision, the Planning Commission must consider the continued appropriateness of the SUP. Should the Planning Commission approve a 1-year time extension, staff recommends modifications to Condition 3 to reflect the new expiration date of March 30th, 2025. And if the request is approved, an updated notice of decision will be issued with these conditions, which will supersede any previously issued notice of decision letter. Brian Elder is here representing the project, and I'm available for questions.
Right? Okay, is there anything you'd like to say on behalf of the applicant?
Brian Elder, applicant for Carson City. And then what was your question?
Okay, just like to hear from you. You've read all the new conditions of use and you've approved them? You've
We
accept
did,
them?
yeah. We
Okay.
accepted with the new extension.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Is on this diagram that's right here, it says final colors to be selected at time of purchase. So you guys are waiting to figure out the colors at time of purchase?
Yeah, we're trying to match the colors on the dispatch facility, which it's adjacent to. So I have color samples. I've had them for a year. So once we get the approval to purchase, then we will make those selections.
Is that reflected in the conditions of use that it's going to match the existing building?
Yes, it would be Condition 5.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions, the applicant? Commissioner Borders?
I'd like to thank you guys for being timely in your asking for renewal. I know I was the Wharton has a progress, I guess, on that before, but thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
And that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Cron?
Yeah, just a couple things, Brian. In the application or in the paperwork we received or in the staff report, you would put the city put the project on hold, or the little shelter on hold here because you were experimenting or looking at the new fire station as maybe a location. Why didn't that pan out?
I'm not sure. I don't know the details on that. I wasn't completely involved in those conversations. Darren Anderson he's the project manager on that project, so he may know more, but I don't know if it was area constraints or something like that.
Well, I was
Maybe
just
cost.
curious. That was fine. It just seemed, you put the whole project on hold for a year just to come back to the same place, so.
Yeah, I think it seemed like a good spot for that vehicle to be at, but it just,
Is the funding in place for the project?
it is, I believe, yes.
Okay, and then all the permits required?
All the what?
All the permits? You have all the permits ready to go?
So we haven't purchased the building. Once we purchase it, we get all of the engineered drawings, so we'll get the permit after that.
All right, very good. Thank you, Brian.
And Brian, I have to open up for public comment if you have nothing else that you wanted to add to this. Okay, great.
Denny French, Carson City. I just was coached in how to stay away. Anyhow, my consideration is this particular shed, or I'm sorry, shelter, was intended for an emergency equipment piece, and my thought is not having it at the main station might mean that it's a little less crowded in case of emergency with everything moving and such, or just not all of your eggs in one basket type thing, where you have two different locations to disperse needed equipment. But I was really disappointed to see it come back up. I thought perhaps they were going to revise it to be more of a shelter, because the piece of equipment in there is still going to be exposed to weather the way it's built. So I was disappointed that they didn't enhance it more or make it a full-on total shelter instead of just a cover in the side. Thank you. That was my contribution to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything on that? Is why it's a partial shelter as opposed to a fully enclosed?
It actually is a fully enclosed. That one side will be enclosed. That was just showing the beams. It was like a cutout.
Okay, so it's hooked onto the building, so on
It'll
three
be
sides?
detached from the building, but the side though will be another full side, like the left side on the screen.
Oh, okay.
That was just a cutoff showing the
okay.
beams.
Great, thank you for the clarification. Any other questions? Commissioner Kilgore?
You know the value of the item that'll be stored?
I am not sure. That would be a question for the sheriff.
Okay. Seeing any other further questions? Okay, I'd like to go ahead and ask for a motion. Commissioner Kilgore?
Oh, why not?
I thought you were headed that way, so.
I was on raising my hand, but you know, I like it. I move to approve an extension of the expiration date for LU-2022-0066 to March 30th, 2025, as the approved special use permit continues to be appropriate and the activity permitted by the special use permit will not adversely impact other properties in the area or the public interest.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cron. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next we have for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit, SUP, for a residential use on property zoned retail commercial, RC, located at 302 East John Street, Assessor's Parcel APN 002-15308. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris again. The subject property is 0.15 acres in size, zoned retail commercial, and located just west of the intersection with East John and North Stewart Street. As you can see from this slide, there's a mix of commercial and residential zonings and uses in the area. While the bulk of the properties are commercially zoned, the yellow stars indicate where there are residential uses. Some of these properties have a mix of residential and commercial uses on site, while others are developed with solely residential uses. On the subject property, there is a 1,305 square foot office building, which was previously converted from a single-family residence, and a 576 square foot detached garage. The property is accessed via an easement from North Fall Street through the parcel immediately to the west. According to the assessor's office, their records indicate the structures were built in 1953, and the applicant is now seeking a special use permit to allow for single-family residential use in a non-residential zoning district. Per Carson City Municipal Code 18.04.130, a single-family residence is a conditional use in the RC zoning district and therefore requires a special use permit. The use must also comply with the provisions of Division 1.18 of the Development Standards, and there's a complete analysis of the project's compliance with Division 1.18 under Finding 5, beginning on page 5 of the staff report, and I'm happy to go over those with you if you request. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff was able to make all findings and is recommending approval. subject to the 4 conditions of approval which are included in the staff report. We've not received any public comments regarding this project. And with that, I'm available for questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Minor, would you like to come forward, please? And please state your name for the record. Yep.
There you go, you got a green light.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Scott Miners.
Okay, and I think we just need to have some questions from the commissioners. So Commissioner Border?
Thank you. My first question is for the staff. The lot that's adjacent to that is a parking lot,
Yes,
is that owned by someone else,
yes, it's owned by
Is that a
the
different
school
owner?
district.
by the school district?
Yes, that's correct.
It looked to me, and I couldn't tell for sure, that the side yard was encroaching. That the house appeared to be on the property line of that piece of property, but I can't tell for sure. And I just wanted to ask if it was conforming or non-conforming.
It's conforming. The RC zoning district has 0 setbacks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as long as it stays, you can have a residential unit in an RC zone
Yes.
and have the 0 setbacks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, and I have a question for the applicant. You stated that you're going to make it a residence. There's a for sale sign in the front yard. Is that to sell it as a residential piece of property or as a commercial piece of property?
Ideally as a residential, and that's why we're doing the special use permit application.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Cron?
Yeah, well, first off, I thought your application was very good, so thank you. I
Thank
thought it was well-written and stayed on task related to the questions asked.
Thank you.
But I'm trying to put my head around how the parking works in the back. Now, again, if I read the information correctly in the staff report, you guys have been running a business out of there for a number of years. Is that right?
We did for
Did.
a number of years, yes.
So how do you use your garage? It just seems like it's such a crazy little angle. I just couldn't imagine getting an F-150 pickup truck into that garage. So how does that work?
Basically, you just need a can opener.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, one of our cars just goes through the easement and very easily, just without anything, just goes right into the garage because it's a double, sort of a oversized garage. The other vehicle that parks closest to the west side of the garage, you have to sort of go in partway, back up, and then straighten out to get in
Okay, so you can get 2 cars in there.
easily.
Okay, that's what I was just, because they were talking in the staff report of you had on-street parking for guests and then 2 parking opportunities for parking 2 other vehicles. And I was just, I looked at that site several times and I go, how do they get that in? How do they get their vehicles into the garage?
Yeah, we wondered that at first as well. So, yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I have public comment. No public comment. Okay, then I'd like to entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, did you accept the conditions?
We accept the conditions, yes.
Okay, terrific. And then I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Madam Chair, I move to approve LU 2024-0043 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Thank you. And
I-
second?
I will second.
Yeah, I have a second over here. Who seconded over here?
Oh, it doesn't matter, whoever.
Seconded by Commissioner DeChristopher. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, your SUP is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No. No. So, okay. And that brings us up to Hope and staff reports, please.
Okay, I've had a request for some updates from some commissioners. So Stephen Pocate will first explain to you what the results were of the traffic analysis for the apartments on Roop. I've been asked to provide that information.
Stephen Pote, Development Engineering for the record. So there was an update to the traffic impact study for the low-income apartments at Roop and Northridge. And specifically during the Planning Commission, the question of site distance came up. And so they evaluated all of the proposed driveways as well as the intersection and then the crosswalks. And they all met our standards. However, the crosswalk at the top of the hill there on Northridge, because it's a little more limited in sight distance, they recommended adding advanced warning signs saying crosswalk ahead. So those will be installed with the first phase that's under construction now.
And those will be installed by the developer?
Correct.
Okay. My other question is does that also take into account the property on the south?
It does, yes.
And there's no site limitations on that one to the south?
No, that one met our standards for site distance.
Okay, thank you.
We also, Stephen's prepared to give you an exhibit which shows the water usage for marijuana facilities. There was a question posed whether or not the marijuana facilities were staying within the growth management numbers. And so Stephen can speak to the exhibit he's pulled together.
Yeah, so the exhibit that's up on the screen right now, what that is showing is 4 different cultivation facilities and the average monthly water use in gallons per day. As you can see, there's a horizontal line going across that's hitting at 10,000 gallons per day, which is the new growth management cutoff. The old one was at 15,000, which the highest peak on that blue line is just below 15,000, but you can see kind of a general downward trajectory on the one that's using the most water. There actually are 2 other grow facilities that aren't on this graph because they're served by state permitted wells.
Okay, so we're just reporting out on this. It's not a discussion item. It just, I was asked to report out on those 2 items, so we provided that data.
May I ask a question?
Yes, but don't go too far.
The blue line for the first 2 years was very high and then it fell down. Is it because is that too far? I'm asking why do you think they changed or what was different?
So we haven't done any investigation into that, so it
Okay.
probably has to do with their operations.
All right, that's fine.
Okay, so those were my report items. The next
you for that.
item, which we're all spending a lot of time on, is the master plan update. And so as the chairman and I have been referring to it, it's the listening tour. And we took the show on the road. And so under this item, it might be interesting if each commissioner wants to talk about what their experience has been on taking the show on the road.
Let's start at the end, and Commissioner Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hope and I met with the Lions Club at the La Capitale, about a week ago?
About that.
About a week ago. Maybe 15 people in the room. Hope's methodology was to briefly talk through the master plan and then ask people what they liked and what they wanted to change in the city. I suspect the other commissioners dealt with the same. I thought there were a lot of good and nuanced answers. A subset of them actually had to do with the master plan process, but that doesn't mean that the ones that were not necessarily opinions related to the master plan lacked value. I mean, land planning is so fundamental to the future of our city that, if you sit down for 5 minutes, you can draw a line from almost anybody's issue back to land planning and long-term use. There was a very strong vibe of of not necessarily wanting the change that they had already seen to continue. Now, having said that and being sympathetic to that, the demographics of the room were older and a lot of longtime residents. So I think it was a really good process and really good data gathered. It was a somewhat narrow demographic, at least just our one meeting was.
Commissioner Christopher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My exposure at this point was at the March 9th meeting that was held at the library, and per your intro on that, the methodology was the same, and I think that was much appreciated by those who were in attendance, and I think we had about probably 30, 40 people there. We jokingly referred to some of them as hostages because we went out and asked some of the chess players if they were willing to come in, because one was a younger demographic. One of the things that was a takeaway for me from that is not only seeing how pleased people were with the approach that Hope took, wanting to hear, what do you find that you like about Carson? What are the things you would change? I think they felt that they were heard. But we did have, I think we had some new things bubble up. The good part was we had confirmation of the things that we've been talking about for a long time now as a commission and board of supervisors, so no big surprises. But there were some new things that came out about it, which at first I was a little surprised. Nightlife was one of them, which, the point I want to make, it has led to, I think what I saw in that meeting and from discussions with some of you, it's continued, is we know what our primary goal is, which is to look at revisions that make the master plan. We continue on this path of pleasing the majority of people and using it as a revision of 2006, and then looking at the zoning to support that, so that we know it's going to support what the vision for Carson City is. But we've had all these little side things come out that really they may not necessarily be in our purview, but I think they are important. And I hope that we have something in place after we tackle the actual revision and zoning, that we can still be a part of that conversation, because there's linkage throughout it. Whether it's economic development and finding a champion for that, or addressing business department, et cetera, or building department, et cetera, so that we can make it a little more holistic. Thank you.
Commissioner Lloyd, and the meeting that I attended was early on in this month, and it was the men's club, for lack of whatever their official name is, and it was interesting. It was interesting to see I mean, it was a very specific demographic, but the idea that some of the residents in Carson City want to see big, beautiful, old historic homes populate, or big homes populating large acreage in Carson City, and then some wanting tiny homes and wanting to see that type of product in our community on maybe larger pieces of property as well. So it was just an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to additional conversations. I know Terry was at that same meeting, so it will be interesting to see what little gems she pulled out of that meeting.
I actually have been to several meetings. The first one was the men's club, and it was really kind of different, because Hope's approach was, I think that it's really welcome, because I think people expect us to come with PowerPoints and little, easels and saying, this is what we plan. And I think that it's a surprise for each group that we've gone to when we say, we haven't planned anything really here. We want to hear what you have to say. And I think the public outreach has been well received. I think with the men's club, I think that was it puts it in a easier thing where you can talk to people. And I had one gentleman that was very upset about the state buying buildings and taking them off the tax roll, but he didn't see the parallel of the city buying property and building stuff. He didn't see that that would also come off the tax roll. And so once that we discussed that, all of a sudden it was like an epiphany. And so I think that's one of the things is they just don't understand how all the things work hand in hand. The Saturday meetings have been great because we've also had the input from kids that are in one of the classrooms from Carson High, and their input and their ideas have been really, really a breath of fresh air. And at the same time is Hope has been able to use this is also kind of a basic on what planning really is and teaching these kids and, making sure that they're learning that in school. But what it does is it resonates with the other people in the room because they start getting it too. So those are really good. And our demographics have been really different there. I mean, some people have come back twice, which is kind of interesting. We've also met with the Builders Alliance, and we've met with the Realtors today. So with both of those groups, it's been really a cross-section because both of those groups want to bring people into the community. And so to hear their input of what they liked, I mean, I was so surprised with the builders that they all just love open space. They love trails. They love events. I mean, this was their main focus. And so that was interesting, but also we discussed not having a proponent for business and to bring businesses into this community. We have a lot of different groups that have that as one of their hats, but nothing specific. I did love one of the things today in Realtors where one of the things that was said is that Carson City is what's it old? How do you say that, Hope? That was just wonderful. I love the way that this was said, and I guess at one time it was actually kind of a slogan for Carson City, and this must have been many years ago, but it was really nice. But then also we had people talking about that needing to have more middle income housing is basically what they said, and a variety of building materials, products, and densities.
They said it's what America used to be.
Yeah, and I thought that was just really kind of neat, because that's what they felt the downtown was. But their big problem was, again, North Carson Street and empty buildings. And I think the empty buildings has been something that has gone all the way through all the meetings. So now I'm gonna let Chuck talk.
Did you leave anything?
No.
Okay. I also met with the Building Alliance, and the first takeaway of what they missed out of Carson City was Adele's. And I thought that was a little amusing. But there were two themes that I got from them. One of them was the same thing that Terry said about economic development. It seems like there's nothing in the city, sometimes economic development comes from the chamber, sometimes it comes from private entities, sometimes it comes from the city itself. And it seems like everybody thinks we need it, but nobody knows who's in charge yet. And I think that was an interesting takeaway from the people that I heard. I also was interested in what they said about building, and several of them were in favor of a large lot, large homes, primarily because the appraised value of those houses would increase the appraised value of all this community of Carson City, which would raise the FHA limit so that other people could afford to buy middle income and lower income housing, because the FHA can loan more money. And I hadn't thought of it in that text before, but I think because we're so geographically limited, that would be hard to do. We'd have to build, $154 million houses to make any kind of effect, I think, in the FHA. And I don't see us doing that. So, but I think we were welcomed, and I think they liked the approach, Hope, that we're using, and I think we're on the right track.
I didn't have a chance to meet with anyone. I was scheduled to, but I unfortunately have a child that was very sick at the time, so I was forced to stay home and care for him. But I can say that being a downtown business owner during the monthly wine walks, I'll see as many as 300 to 500 people on a monthly basis, and these people are very aware of what's going on and who I am and what I do, and are constantly on the basis of wanting to talk one-on-one about this or that, even things way out of my jurisdiction or control. And I do get a very close and intimate relationship with many of these people that have been part of this community for 30 plus years. And you're talking, like I said, in the range of 300 to 500 people on a monthly basis, and those aren't always the same people. They do say things that, they want to keep Carson City the way it is, and the typical stuff you'll hear from people that come up and give us their comments. They are much in favor of the large house on large property things. It's like you said, how much space do we have left to actually increase the value of things by adding so many of these houses on 1 acre parcels? I just don't see. Are we going to start just bulldozing the mountains down? I mean, I don't know where they think this property is going to come from. But on the other hand, there's also a large number of realistic people that understand what's going on in the city, and most of them actually disapprove with a lot of projects that have been put through in my time as commissioner, and have commended me on how many no votes that I get, and or I should say that I give, based on the what I see as a large amount of people that are trying to make money. Where money doesn't matter to some people, money does matter to other people. I've never been one that cared much for money and wished the whole thing never existed. Can find it a root of all evil. And that's what I'm finding is the consensus among people that have lived in Carson City for a long period of time. They're happier when they're not concerned that someone's going to come make them a $1 million offer on their house, because that's the thing they get all the time, is people sending them offer on their houses that aren't even on the market. It's a really interesting thing and hasn't really been going on a long time. It's great for real estate. I get that. I'm sure the high-end real estate agents just love the fact that they can sell $1 million house in Carson City, but the people that can afford them aren't the ones that want them around here. It's people coming from other places that can afford stuff like that, because that kind of money comes from out of state in most cases. Aside from just being really close with a lot of the local people that we see come in here and do a lot of comments and speak up about some of the projects that we have approved, I gotta say that I stand with them in most cases, and genuinely, I'm not just up here, promoting that I want to support the public. It's a genuine thing. I've lived here for over 30 years myself in Carson City, and I've seen how much it's changed over the last 30 years. And I mean, I wasn't that small of a child 30 years ago. I might look younger than I am, so that might be the case. A lot of people might not see it that way. They think that I don't have as much experience to speak from because I must have been real young when I moved here. But no, I remember when there was a much smaller demographic of the upper class people that have seemed to have taken over and start running things the way they are around here. And some of the associations as well are even more guilty than that. They have.
Commissioner Kilgore, what I think we're trying to do is figure out what we've been getting from the public comment, and I hope that you attend some of those meetings, because in that way you'll be able to see some of the other different
Sure. In which case, yeah. So if anyone spoke personally with 300 to 500 people in the last 2 months at those public meetings and have a really good, idea of how the public feels about those things, I'd be more than glad to, have a private meeting with them and talk about, their time at those meetings with, I don't remember how many people were stated as the most in those meetings, but I'm pretty sure it's a much smaller percentage than what I'm talking about as far as the actual public of Carson City and the intimate conversations I have with them on the monthly basis.
Again,
So I think that's more so the point, is to understand where the city stands. I mean, if you're concerned about what club is impressed with what we're doing, then I'm not so impressed with that type of perspective. But I will concede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cron, please.
Well, today was my first foray into the public hearings that we've been having, or the listening tours. I've been having some, been out and about, so I haven't had a chance. So this was my first one today. I went with Hope and with Chairperson Preston to our realtors, and I'm not going to repeat what Terry has presented. I think she did a great job of capsulizing what we heard today. So I'll just kind of hit on a couple little items that I thought that were in addition to what she had mentioned. Was one, I got the opportunity to talk about the question of what you like here in Carson City. What's that jewel? What's that gem that you see? And it was really refreshing to hear how much heartfelt from the realtors. They really do love Carson City. They enjoy being able to, if you will, in some ways, be an ambassador for us, sharing with these people coming in a lot of the different good things about Carson City, and I know that's part of their job, but I think it was really heartfelt, or at least that's what I was getting. The other thing that was really nice, I thought, was that I was agreeing with about 90% of them that I like the same things that they liked about Carson City. So I thought there was a nice connection there. On far of the things they wanted to change, I guess for me, again, it was basically empty storefronts and empty buildings were a big concern. But I was just surprised. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was glad they were aware of the container movement. They talked a lot about using containers to provide housing or buildings or businesses in possibly, and also the tiny house movement. I know that we've had some discussions about the tiny house movement. So I was glad that they were familiar with those terms and what that meant. And so I thought we got a great group of folks out today, about 30, 35, 40.
We had 38 today.
38?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, though, too, is we are open to any group, period, or any time. And I think this is something that's kind of important to say, is that if there's anybody that wants to meet with the public, and it doesn't matter if it's 10 people, it doesn't matter if it's 50 people, it doesn't matter if it's 100 people. The one thing that we're looking for is to bring it out to more people in the community. So the wine walk is actually the first Saturday in April. If you'd like to go ahead and figure out a time that we could meet with the wine walkers, I'll tell you what, I'm with you. There is 300 to 500 wine walkers on that first Saturday, and I meet with them too. But to be in a situation where we're actually with Hope, with the other people in the Planning Commission, but keeping it focused and saying, oh, what do you like? What is important to you? And then saying, what would you change? And leaving it limited to that, rather than saying, this is what I've seen, this and that, because we have people here that have been here for 80, 90 years, and we have people have been here like last week, but they all have an opinion, and this is the community they've chosen. So I think that's, let's open it up. This is the, listening tour, and let's do it again. And so you're going to be doing it on Saturday.
Right. So on Friday, I'm doing a radio interview. So I'll be on the radio. It will be my second radio interview on the master plan update. Then I'm back in the library on Saturday, and I think Commissioner Cron is coming, and Commissioner Lloyd will have paint on her, but she'll be there. And then that will be our last Saturday as of right now. We are only planning for March, so it's been 4 Saturdays. Then we have a few other groups who we're meeting with, and today I have decided to do a special outreach to the 20-something-year-olds because I feel like that's been a missing demographic, and we are meeting with the college again, and we did meet with the college, but I feel like that I want to get to 20-something-year-olds who work in Carson City. I think that's really important. As you know, we have a contract planner, Armando, who's Spanish speaking, who's working on this. So I've asked him to reach out to large employers to try to get the input from their employees. Let's see, he doesn't know this yet. I'm going to have him reach out to some Spanish speaking businesses to see if those business owners will help with some type of outreach effort. All of that said, on April 10th and 11th, the consultants will be back in town, and they have a lot of meetings set up. We have 2 different meetings set up with the state. One's the administrative branch and one's the legislative branch to talk about what they're doing with their space needs. We're meeting with a class at WNC when the consultants are here. They're going to participate in the Builders Roundtable that I host quarterly, so I'm hosting that meeting on the 10th, and they'll be at that meeting. Also, you'll be having a special meeting on the 11th in the morning. I think it's a 9 a.m. meeting. And that will be an opportunity for you all to provide input, whether it's your personal observations, whether it's input just from living here, working here, observations from the meetings you've attended. Everything's fair game. But they're here to listen to you and to what your thoughts are. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Planning Commission is appointed, and you represent a cross-section of our community. You don't all think alike. You don't all have the same value system, but your job is to represent the value system and the community at large. And every time you vote on findings, you're applying your value system to those findings. A majority of you has to find in the affirmative for something to get approved. Similarly, this is a policy document, and so you'll each, representing a cross-section of the community, advise of what you think is really important from everything you've heard, everything you've experienced. So your experiences as a commissioner reviewing requests is valuable, but I think the extra going out without an agenda and just a blank slate and saying to people, tell me what you think. There's not a project in front of you. Just tell me what you think. Whether you're getting that at the library, going to a committee meeting, or having them come into your business, it's all valid. Your life is what forms who you are, right? And so that anything you say is going to be valid. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that the meeting on the 11th is for you to talk to the consultant, not for the consultant to speak at you. We'll also be having a virtual meeting on April 18th, so I should be more specific about the community meetings. So on April 10th, which is a Wednesday, there will be a community-wide meeting at 5:30 p.m. at Staybridge Suites. We've reserved that room for the day. On April 11th, which is a Thursday, the Planning Commission will have a public meeting at 9 a.m. in this room. And then at 2 o'clock and again at 5:30, there will be a community-wide meeting in the theater. And we've also reserved the Bonanza room for any Spanish speakers, and we'll have the Spanish-speaking planner available to speak to any Spanish speakers who participate who would rather converse in Spanish. There will then be a virtual meeting, actually both meetings on the 11th will have the Spanish speaker. And then there's a virtual meeting, which will be on April 18th at 5 p.m. So we do have the websites up. Our email is masterplan@carson.org. So we are just trying to make sure people know so they can give us input. And so I appreciate that all of you are coming with me because I think it's really valuable for you to get that input. So that's the update on the master plan. And now I'll tell you about your future agenda items. Future agenda items, you have about 5 special use permits coming next month. You'll have one for a trailhead and a trail on Kuntz. You'll have one for a guest building and barn on Alfred Way. You'll have one over at Lampa for 2 senior living facilities. You'll have one for a fence that's within 5 feet of a sidewalk. Is that variance or is that SUP? The fence? SUP, okay. And then an SUP to convert a building into a living area. And then there will be a zoning map amendment before you to rezone land. It's weird. At the mall, part of the parking lot is actually right of way. So it's zoned public, which is really limited. So we'll be looking at rezoning that to retail commercial because it really functions as the parking lot of the mall. Going back to the master plan for a second, I understand we're all hearing a lot of things that don't necessarily translate to the master plan. Just so you know, just this afternoon, as a result of the realtors meeting, I sat with the head of the health department because social services is part of health, and reviewed with her a lot of the input we received at the builders meeting and at the realtors meeting that deals with social services. She and I discussed it. I've reached out to some people to follow up to see if they're willing to talk to her and her staff about the observations. So although what we're hearing doesn't necessarily translate to our master plan, it's good input for the city at large. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
I just had a real quick question for Hope. You mentioned reaching out to 20-something-year-olds. I was just curious how you were going to do that.
I actually am going to use the city's workforce, and I was at a meeting earlier today with all the department heads and the electeds, and I said, look, I really want to get to this demographic, so I'm going to host a luncheon, and we're going to do the meeting. We'll give them free food, so if you have any 20-year-olds on your staff, please send them over. And actually, the person from Parks and Rec said, well, what if they're part-time? I said, I don't care. I care about age. I don't care about if they're full-time, part-time. It's like, where do you live? Why do you live there? You know, what is appealing about Carson? Like, let's have the conversation with the young people in our workforce. So that's the sample I can get to easily.
I might just throw out there that it might be even good to include those who don't live in Carson, but are working in Carson.
100%. I mean, I'm definitely not, because I'll be curious if and we're hearing this, right? A lot of people are with families are living in Dayton. I met with the superintendent yesterday, and he told me that the Lyon County School District is the only school district in the state that's growing. Interesting, right? And so, yeah, I'm not restricted. I don't care where they live. They come here to work, whether they walk 5 feet or they drive 5 miles. So it's a demographic.
Commissioner Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Less of a question and more of a comment. I think most of you know that I've done a lot of public involvement work. I've been really impressed with the level of input for a city this size.
Mhm.
And that exists at 2 levels. The level of active engagement from people who are interested in showing up at the community. If you aggregate the head count of all the people we've talked to, it's pretty far above the norm. And the level of effort that the city is putting in. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying thank you and good job, Hope. I know it is. I know it is, but you've got your hand on the tiller for a lot of this.
Commissioner Borders?
I don't have a Goombaya question. I have a question for our attorney over here. It's been almost 2 years. Where's Title 18?
My understanding is that Title 18 is in the hands of Mr. Yu right now, who is on special assignment, so he can deal with Title 18.
Yeah, but Mr. You told us that we would have it by January. Actually, you said the end of December.
He said if it was a Pinto. Said the Ferrari wouldn't be ready for a few more years.
Actually, I did get an email from Mr. Yu yesterday regarding the development standards, and he was having trouble working through the document we had provided to him with the revisions. And I actually haven't even had a chance to talk to Stephen Pote about this because Stephen actually started that document. And so we have to talk about how we handled the revisions, and we may have to spell them out a little more clearly so that Dan can get through them.
I just want to take the time to apologize for everyone that thought I was discounting anyone's opinion tonight, especially anyone in the public. I definitely didn't want to come across that way. What I was weighing was an interest of the majority, and I will absolutely support the lower class, lower middle class, who I see as the majority. And in which case, they don't feel their voices are very heard, and when their voices are heard, they don't feel that their opinions are implemented very well. So that's the statement I was getting at. Sorry for offending anyone.
One of the things I was going to ask for, Hope, is if there's some way we can publish these dates and these outreach things, if we can publish them on the website, on the little TV channel, and hopefully in the Appeal and in Carson Now. I mean, if we were able to do that, especially when we have, somewhat all-day sessions and the ones in the community center, and, acknowledging that there will be a Spanish speaker that can help. I think that those really need to be advertised, because this right here will open it up to even more.
And I know that the city has its own social media, but every single department has its own social media, and I think it could be helpful for those departments to also share to their followers.
Any other suggestions from the commissioners? Yeah, because and I think I really want to really, put it out there again. Any group that would like to go ahead and meet, we're there, and we want to hear what they have to say, because there are so many different things, and there's things that we can work with. But like Hope said, there's been a couple of things that's not in our purview, but she's been able to take that to the people that actually can work on that. So thank you. Commissioner DeChristopher.
Question for you, Hope. The meetings that you're referring to, like WNC, et cetera, on that day ahead of ours, is it all right with you if a planning commissioner attends any of those sessions?
Sure. What I can do is work through the chair and do the scheduling like
Okay.
we've been doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just on those, probably just one, because I don't know how big the rooms are, like when we meet with the state and when we meet with WNC. But sure, I'm happy to work with the chair on that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, any further reports? Okay, may I have public comment, please?
Denny French, Carson City, thank you. I appreciate everybody's involvement, and their opportunity to meet with the public was very appreciated by me. And while I didn't get to be at the meetings each of you were at, the men's club thing, I would like to know the demographics of that, age-wise and financial-wise and business-wise and such. But Nathaniel's situation has me perked to the idea that a lot of these businesses do, well, not as many, I think, as Nathaniel's because of his position on the commission, do hear and do have communications with their public, and I think Nathaniel's perspective, because of that, I worked at a grocery store, and it was amazing what I heard as a box boy. When I bagged groceries or when I went through the bottles and the conversations about the community situations and what people thought about them, I didn't solicit, but they shared. And I feel that those type of things that you hear in every day, you hear during your work, and you as well, all of you do. And we've got to take those things into consideration as a big pool. This is a community, we're all family in a way. And so the more we can reach out and make it comfortable for people to be able to say what they think, the better. So all of these are great. And I just would like to add maybe that the consideration be put to the schools to say, listen, you have 20-year-olds that would want to go to a place where they get free food, and they're going to have a chance to say what they think should be in this community and how it affects them. One of the young library workers had mentioned to me he'd love to have a place of his own. He doesn't mind his situation where he is. He's very grateful for it, but he would like to live where he can have a place he can afford, and it's just not feasible. And I'm going, he's not alone. He's not the only one that's mentioned that to me, of all ages, but that those things are big. But I do appreciate everybody's being out there, and the way Hope and Commissioner Chair Preston have related in the library has just been really eye-opening to me. sometimes I think, I do feel like Nathaniel, I'm sorry, I use first name, Commissioner Kilgore, that myself, when I'm hearing, a lot of people understand they might be heard, but their ideas and thoughts are not being implicated, but put into work or part of what ends up as the end result of the discussion. And that's hard. It's hard to hear that over and over, even the people that come on a regular basis, and feeling in some ways that their presence and the number was more important than their message. And sometimes the message isn't the number of people, but just the one person breaking some new ground, giving us a different perspective. Thank you very much.
I hope I did want to talk about one other thing, though, is that can you explain what you did with the outreach for the schools and for the parents? And then also we have the Downtown Association is another group that we're trying to meet with. And what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about these meetings, and for those people that have not attended, is that every person in that room is asked to speak and give their opinion at least a minimum of 2 times, and then allowed to sometimes come back 3 and 4. So
True. And yes, we did send a flyer home, and thank you to the school district for working with us, advertising the Saturday meetings at the library and including the fact that we would have a Spanish-speaking planner there for Spanish-speaking families and residents and business owners. And so we did reach out to every single solitary school child, received a notice. Actually, the parents get it. There's some text or something that goes out to the parents. So my administrative assistant got it. She goes, "Oh, I just got the notice." So, because she has kids in the school. So we did do that outreach. We've reached out to the Downtown Business Association. We haven't gotten that on the calendar yet. But as the chairman said, we'll meet with anybody. We'll meet with 5 people. It doesn't really matter. We just don't want anyone to feel that their input was not welcomed. Everybody's input is welcome.
thank you. Is there anything else? Seeing nothing, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, Commissioner Brooks, and we need a second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Borders. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. So moved. Thank you.